The winter of 1917 had come early to Siberia. A slow-moving tide of cold crept across the great northern lands, burying the forests in layers of soft white, stilling the rivers under thick sheets of ice, and casting a pale hush over the countryside. Along the endless ribbon of rail that wound its way from Moscow to Vladivostok, the snow did not fall in great gusts, but in a steady, patient curtain light, silent and indifferent. Imagine yourself on that train, not as a grand figure, not even a soldier or a diplomat, but simply a quiet observer, perhaps seated alone in one of the wooden compartments. Wrapped in a worn coat, your breath misting faintly in the cool air. The train does not rush. It moves with the rhythm of the land, measured, deliberate, unhurried. Many had been traveling for days, some even weeks, crossing from the western front of the empire to the more stable reaches of the east. The platform lights flickered uncertainly, and the snow gathered undisturbed on empty benches. At one station, a man with a gray beard sold hot potatoes from a small fire pit wrapped in scraps of cloth. He did not speak, only held out his hand for kopecks. His uniform was tidy but worn, his face calm, lined with the patience of someone who had seen many winters, many passengers, and many endings. He stared into the darkness beyond the window as if trying to find the edges of the world. Once he reached into his coat and pulled out a letter. A sense that the land moved slower than politics. Snow knew nothing of governments, and winter would outlast kings and councils alike. He read it silently, lips barely moving, then folded it carefully and returned it to the inside pocket. Whatever it said was meant only for him, and perhaps for no one at all. He poured tea from a heavy pot, wiped down tables that barely needed wiping, and offered quiet nods instead of conversation. A small gramophone sat in the corner, unused for now, its brass horn gleaming faintly in the lantern light. No one asked for music. The train lingered there for just 6 minutes, enough time for a few passengers to stretch their legs and breathe the air thinner here, colder than memory could quite hold. Then the whistle blew, low and distant, and the train pulled slowly away again. In time, it became a companion to sleep, a gentle reminder of motion in a world otherwise still. The passengers settled deeper into their coats, their blankets, their silence. Dreams began to stir slowly, like snow drifting down from high branches. There were bureaucrats clutching official documents that no longer had meaning. The horizon vanished, swallowed by drifting white in the thick, moonless dark. Eastward, always eastward, toward a dawn that would come eventually, even if unseen behind clouds and snow. The way it creaked and groaned in corners, the way its joints responded to the cold, and yet it endured. Just as the people aboard it endured change, fear, distance, and time. They did not rush to their destinations, because there was nowhere to rush to. They moved forward because the tracks allowed it, because it was the only direction left. Lamps inside the train glowed softly, casting golden light onto pages of books, across quiet faces, and over wooden tables scratched with age. The soft clinking of teaspoons in ceramic cups was the only real sound besides the rails. Outside, the wind brushed past the windows like a low sigh, constant and lonesome. There were women wrapped in scarves, their eyes tired, their children asleep in their laps. There were men who had once held ranks and titles, now wearing plain coats and sitting like shadows among strangers.
We're waiting
for the next station, the next town, the next morning. It was a symbol of ambition, of imperial reach, of the stubborn desire to connect the center with the edges. Stretching over 9,000 kilometers, it stitched together forests and steppes, rivers and plains, villages and cities, in one long, improbable line. Built over decades, it had seen summers of mosquito-thick air, winters of frostbite and silence. And in 1917, it was carrying more than passengers. It was bearing the weight of a dying world. Each turn of the steel wheels produces a dull clunking sound, muted slightly by the snow on the tracks. It is a sound that repeats endlessly, forming a kind of lullaby for the restless and the weary. This was not a train of celebration, nor one of hope. It was a passage through uncertainty. The Russian Empire, old and enormous, was teetering on the edge of collapse. The Tsar had abdicated earlier that year. Power shifted and slipped between provisional governments, soldiers' committees, and whispered revolutions. But out here, in the far reaches of the east, such things felt like rumors carried on the wind. Out here, life continued as it always had, cold and careful. The Trans-Siberian Railway had always been more than a railway. Inside the train, the compartments were simple, but not without warmth. A small coal stove radiated heat from the corner, its metal skin clicking quietly as it adjusted to the temperature. Curtains, once bright red, now faded and thin, trembled slightly whenever a door opened. The scent of coal smoke mingled with the sharp tang of iron rails and the faint sweetness of samovar tea. In one corner, a soldier slept with his boots still on, his head resting against the window pane. The glass was fogged by his breath, and the frost outside traced delicate patterns almost like feathers. There was no music, no conversation above a murmur. People spoke in whispers, if they spoke at all. But the stops were few, and the stations were often nearly abandoned. As night fell, the snow deepened. You could feel the age of the train in its bones. In the dining car, near the middle of the train, the waiter moved slowly from table to table. Across from the samovar stood a man in a long coat, perhaps a professor, or perhaps simply someone who had once lived in a larger city. The rhythm of the train continued, dash clunk, clunk clunk, never hurried, never loud. Even in a time of turmoil, of revolutions whispered into the wind. Of flags raised and lowered faster than the trains could travel, there was something enduring in that ride. And so the train moved on. The cold had a stillness to it that seemed to stretch forever. Outside the train, the snowy plains spread in all directions, vast and endless, broken only occasionally by the dark silhouettes of birch trees or the low, distant humps of forgotten villages. She said nothing, but her eyes were open, watchful, as if waiting not for a destination, but for some memory to arrive. Across from her, a young boy, perhaps her grandson, had curled into a woolen shawl and was already fast asleep, his small breaths fogging the space just above his lips. They checked tickets without asking, nodded politely to those awake, and passed wordlessly by the sleeping. The board had seen better days, its corners frayed and the pawns mismatched, some replaced with coins or bits of folded paper. They spoke rarely, only to make a move or refill a cup with weak, lukewarm tea. Trees bowed under its weight, their limbs creaking in the dark like old ships at sea. The tracks ahead curved gently through a pine forest, the trees tall and thin, rising like black spears against the white. He paused often, not to think, but simply to breathe, to listen. Once, during the first days of the journey, she had brought it down. Villages came and went, sometimes marked only by a single flickering light in a distant house or a line of smoke drifting slowly into the dark sky. These were places without names to the travelers. They were simply part of the background, a landscape of silence and snow. And played softly for a few minutes a gentle melody, old and slow, barely louder than the engine's sigh. The conductor adjusted the brakes with care, and the metal groaned gently in response. Vladivostok, for many, was only a point on a map, a promise of distance rather than arrival. What lay their order? Chaos? Refuge was unknown. What mattered was the journey itself, the rhythm of it, the calm certainty of movement through an unmoving world. No one stirred. They had grown used to these moments. The dips and curves of the journey were now as familiar as the lull between thoughts just before sleep. But now it sat silent. Even music, it seemed, had grown tired. Outside his compartment, the landscape blurred into a painting of snow and shadow. A slow, pale light would press against the horizon, brushing softly against the snow. But for now, the world remained wrapped in night. The train moved on, steady and quiet, carrying its passengers like drifting thoughts across the vast, sleeping body of a country that was changing, quietly, in the dark. He seemed at peace, the kind of quiet peace that comes when one has accepted the uncertainty of what comes next. Occasionally, a fox or a hare darted across the embankment, startled by the sudden light of the train's lamp, then vanished again into the silence. Their uniforms bore insignias that no longer carried authority, and their eyes, though sharp, had grown quiet. Whether it was 4 or 5 in the morning no longer mattered. What mattered was the warmth of a blanket, the soft clinking of the teacups, the hum of motion that promised. however faintly, that they were still moving forward. Their game was less about strategy now, and more about passing the time, letting the hours dissolve like sugar in water. Their uniforms were thick and layered, and they carried a scent of oil, wool, and the faint metallic tinge of iron. They were not just staff, they were part of the machine. Part of the train itself, steady and calm like the wheels that rolled beneath them. The windows had grown darker now, not just with the hour, but with the thick frost that rimmed the glass like lace. But outside, the water was frozen solid, a sheet of pale gray blue streaked with wind-blown snow. The light danced softly with the motion of the train, making the shadows sway like tall grass in the wind. Books lay open on small tables, their pages turned slowly, not always read. Journals sat half-filled with looping Cyrillic script private thoughts, written to no one, for no purpose other than the slow act of writing. A single ice fisher's hut stood on the edge of the bank, long abandoned, its roof half collapsed. There had once been life here, movement, laughter, perhaps, but now only the tracks and the cold remained. The landscape beyond was barely visible, a blank canvas of winter holding its breath. Inside, however, time passed differently. It did not tick in seconds or minutes, but in the slow movement of carriages, the deep exhale of steam, the gentle clatter of cups returning to saucers. The passengers had settled fully into the rhythm of the train. Some slept sitting up, their heads leaning gently against the paneled walls. Others whispered quietly, telling stories that needed to be spoken aloud even if there was no one truly listening. In one compartment, an elderly woman cradled a wooden icon in her lap, running her thumbs slowly over the smooth, faded surface. The train passed a river sometime after midnight. It crossed a long, groaning bridge of iron and timber, so slow and so steady that the passengers barely noticed. In the corridors between carriages, the wind found its way in through tiny cracks. It wasn't harsh, just a thin, whispering draft that spoke of distance and time. Some travelers stood there briefly, staring out into the vastness as if hoping to see a sign of home, of tomorrow, of something familiar. But there was only snow and stillness, the kind that gently pressed on the chest and made every thought feel heavy. The conductors moved through the train at long intervals, their boots soft against the wooden floors, their presence more ritual than necessity.
Ow.
Somewhere in the rear car, a group of officers displaced by the shifting tides of revolution played chess with a travel-worn set. From the ceiling above, oil lamps cast a muted amber glow. The snow outside deepened still, coating the world in a kind of timeless stillness. The passengers had stopped checking the time. Out here, ours blended together. It was night, and it had been night for a long while. Further up the train, a scholar, perhaps a teacher or clerk once employed by the ministry, sat beneath a flickering lamp, copying verses from memory into a small leather-bound notebook. In a luggage rack above, a violin case rested untouched. Its owner, a young woman wrapped in layers of shawls, had not played since Moscow. The train moved on, threading its way through the folds of the frozen east. Its path was certain, even if the world around it was not. Eventually, in the deepest hour of night, the train slowed slightly, not for a station, but for a bend in the track where the slope dipped steeply. There was no sense of destination in the traditional sense. Somewhere beyond the hills, morning would begin to stir. Somewhere between Irkutsk and Chita, the train began to move through deeper woods. The trees here stood close together, tall pines, heavy with snow, their branches hanging low like tired shoulders. The rails curved gently through the forest, winding with a quiet persistence, as though it too knew that haste was not welcome in this part of the world. By now, the sun had tried to rise once again, though its light was faint, more a softening of darkness than a declaration of day. The news was old even by then, several weeks behind, but he studied it carefully, as if looking for something hidden between the lines. Her fingers, pale and gloveless, traced small shapes in the frost on the glass. Food was not scarce, but it was plain and slowly dwindling. The rules were unclear to the observer, some combination of counting, guessing, and turn-taking, but the rhythm was steady, their laughter soft and brief. Their mother watched from a seat nearby, knitting quietly, her eyes half closed. The train rocked gently from side to side, and her needles clicked in time with it, a quiet mechanical sound that folded itself into the ambiance. Black bread, dried fish, the occasional boiled egg, simple fare. eaten slowly in silence. No one complained. Only a few passengers chose to sit there now, mostly those who preferred solitude, or who had the means to afford an extra cup of tea or a spoonful of preserved jam. They gathered on the window panes and drifted down past the slow-moving train like stars. The forest, the fields, the distant mountains all were slowly dissolving into a dream of white and silence. Even the smoke from the engine disappeared more quickly now, swallowed by the cold air as soon as it rose. The waiter still made his rounds, though slowly, almost as if by muscle memory. Doors closed, the engine groaned, and once more the train pulled forward into the snow. The warm glow spread slowly, like morning in reverse. Passengers pulled blankets tighter, drank the last of their tea, and resumed their quiet vigil watching, waiting, remembering. The train continued its journey east, always east. As the snow fell, the woods thickened, and the old empire slowly disappeared into the long Siberian night. The platform receded behind them. The workers turned their backs, and the world returned to motion. The buildings were low and squat, painted once in blue and white, but now faded and chipped. A few workers, bundled in coats and fur hats, stood near the tracks, waiting with slow patience as the train hissed to a stop. There were no announcements. No one shouted. Instead, the doors opened with a groan, and passengers stepped down onto the platform as if entering a place both strange and familiar. His footsteps were soft, and the dishes he placed on the tables barely made a sound. Others stretched their legs quietly, stamping their feet to keep warm. His face was lined deeply, his beard white and full, and his eyes held a faraway look somewhere between memory and resignation. He did not speak, but eventually boarded again, taking the same seat he had left moments before. No one rushed. The air here was colder than inside the train, and the sky had darkened slightly, a reminder that daylight was already retreating. He moved with the same grace and patience as the snow falling outside present, steady and without comment. They chewed methodically, sipping tea that had long since lost its strength, savoring the heat more than the flavor. She wasn't drawing anything in particular, just moving her hand slowly, letting it be soothed by the cool surface and the repetitive motion. Every so often she looked out, but there was nothing to see except trees and snow, and the occasional flicker of birds between the branches. Patches of open land appeared flat, snowy clearings dotted with stumps, and the skeletal remains of wooden fences. Stories of partisans in the hills of rail lines sabotaged by discontented soldiers, of towns where the red flag now flew where the czars had once waved. But these stories were not told with urgency. They were whispered like myths, shared not for information but for something to do. The listeners nodded, not because they believed, but because the rhythm of storytelling soothed the long journey. These were signs of settlements long gone, or perhaps only sleeping under the snow. Sometimes a small house could be seen in the distance, its chimney unlit, its roof heavy with ice. The train never stopped in these places. There was no station to speak of. No one waiting at the side of the track. No signal flags raised. The train continued on, untroubled by absence. Still, she watched as if expecting something, a landmark perhaps, or just the moment when memory stirred. Perhaps he was searching for news of a city he once lived in, or of a regiment he had once commanded. He had driven this route for nearly 20 years, through revolutions, through winters colder than this, through years when the only passengers were soldiers headed east to suppress uprisings in Manchuria. Was a man of few words, but his silence was not empty. It was full of time of all the winters he had lived through, all the landscapes he had memorized through repetition. To him, the path ahead was not mysterious. It was familiar, predictable. What mattered was not the news from Petrograd, but the turn ahead, the slope near the frozen lake, the signal light just before the next bend. But most likely, he simply read to pass the time, to hold on to the last fragile threads of a world that no longer answered questions. The sky, pale with thin clouds, gave the snow a gentle lavender hue. Frost clung to every surface, and even the steam from the engine seemed to drift more slowly, reluctant to rise and fade. Inside the train, little had changed. The rhythm of life continued in the same soft murmurs and slow gestures. Passengers had, by now, fallen into a routine not structured by clocks or calendars, but shaped instead by the sounds of the train, the quiet stretch of landscape, and the gentle rituals of keeping warm. A middle-aged man, dressed in the rough wool of a minor official, sat near the rear of one carriage, reading the same newspaper he had been studying for days. Across the aisle, a woman who had once worked as a governess leaned against the window. The train's corridors had grown quieter, the movement between carriages less frequent. People were conserving their warmth now, their energy. Near the samovar, two children sat cross-legged on the floor, playing a game of stones. As the morning passed, the forest began to thin. There were rumors, of course, passed quietly from one traveler to the next. In the front carriage, the engineer sipped his tea and stared straight ahead, his hands steady on the controls. The dining car remained dim and mostly unoccupied. Outside, the snow had begun to fall again, fine, dry flakes that shimmered in the pale daylight. By midday, the train approached a larger station, one of the few that still operated with any semblance of order. Some bought food from the lone vendor who sold boiled cabbage and stewed mushrooms from a wooden cart. Among the crowd, an older man in a black coat leaned heavily on a cane, looking not at the station but at the train itself. Soon, the whistle sounded a long, low call that echoed against the surrounding hills. The passengers reboarded without fuss. As the light faded once again, lamps were lit inside the carriages. The train's steady motion seemed to soften as evening settled, and the world outside blurred into shades of gray and white. The snow's whisper grew quieter, the air thicker with frost that pressed gently against the window panes, as if inviting passengers into a world that was neither fully awake nor entirely asleep. Inside, conversations had dwindled to occasional murmurs. A pair of elderly women shared a small pot of weak tea, their hands wrapped around the warm cup, as if it were a talisman against the chill that had crept into the carriage. Their voices were soft, careful as they exchanged memories not of events but of feelings, the comforting warmth of a sunlit summer garden, the scent of fresh bread from a childhood bakery, the distant sound of church bells on a morning long past. Snow-covered fields stretched endlessly, interrupted only by the frozen curves of small rivers. The passengers were drawn into the gentle rhythm of the train, a rhythm that seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of a world in transition, a world on the cusp of change, yet wrapped in the timeless hush of winter. His breathing was steady, the rise and fall of his chest like the gentle swell of the snowdrifts outside, and sound the distant hoot of an owl, the crackle of ice underfoot, the whisper of the wind as it danced through the trees. It was a time suspended, a moment held delicately between past and future. His mother sat nearby, her hands folded in her lap, eyes heavy but watchful. The lights inside dimmed further, curtains were drawn, and the world outside was swallowed once more by the endless white. He captured memories not with flash or spectacle, but with the patient gaze of one who understands the weight of silence. The Siberian winter wraps around the world like a deep, thick blanket, and the last train moves steadily onward, carrying stories, memories, and hopes through the quiet vastness of a world on the brink of change. Each passenger was part of a larger story, their individual histories blending into the collective rhythm of the journey. There was no rush to arrive, no need to hurry forward. The journey itself was the story, the gentle unfolding of time, the steady progress through shadow and snow, the quiet persistence of human presence in a world that seemed both immense and intimate. Each image was a soft imprint, a quiet testimony to lives passing in slow motion through the vastness of the Siberian night. In the muted silence, there was a profound sense of trust in the train. In the journey, in the quiet constancy of this slow passage through a frozen empire, the sky above was a heavy quilt of clouds, dimly lit by the distant moon, casting a silver-blue glow that softened the harsh outlines of the land. Their words were fragments, not demands, leaving plenty of space for silence, a space that breathed calmly around them. A young man in a soldier's uniform, his coat heavy with the grime of many battles, leaned against the window. His eyes were closed and his breathing slow and even, matching the train's rhythmic clatter. His pen moved slowly, thoughtfully, tracing the shapes of words that seemed to emerge from the deep quiet of the train's night. A waiter moved quietly, refilling cups of tea for those who remained. The scent of boiled cabbage and stewed mushrooms lingered faintly, a humble reminder of life's necessities amid the vast stillness of the Siberian winter. He wrote not with urgency, but as one sketches the outlines of a dream, capturing fleeting thoughts before they vanish like smoke. Each line was deliberate, each phrase carefully chosen to mirror the soft darkness outside. Perhaps he dreamed of home, or of places he might never see again. Or perhaps in this moment, he was simply present, held within the gentle sway of the carriage, the lullaby of rails beneath him. Nearby, a writer, if such a title could be claimed, sat with a journal resting on his lap. The dining car was nearly empty now, the small flame of a single lantern casting long shadows on the worn wooden tables. Outside, the landscape changed slowly. The trees, once towering sentinels, thinned into sparse clusters of birch and aspen. In the compartments, the flicker of candlelight illuminated faces closed in, rest or quiet contemplation. A small boy, bundled in a thick coat, lay curled beneath a patchwork quilt. The hours slipped by without urgency. Time here was measured not by clocks or schedules, but by the subtle shifts in light in one carriage. A man with a camera, rare luxury in this time, and place sat quietly, his equipment packed away, but his eyes alert. And so the train moved on, a slender thread of warmth and light weaving through the cold expanse. As the night deepened, the train slowed slightly, approaching a small station that marked the boundary between one region and the next. Imagine yourself there now, nestled in a warm corner of the carriage. The steady pulse of the train beneath you, the soft murmur of voices long faded into sleep. As the train moved steadily onward, the landscape outside began to show hints of subtle change. A delicate shift that marked the gradual approach toward the vast open steppes of Siberia. The trees, once dense and towering, became fewer and more scattered, their trunks thinner and bent by relentless winds. Snow lay thick on the ground, untouched except for the occasional tracks of small animals, hares or foxes, that darted cautiously beneath the skeletal branches. Inside the train, the atmosphere was marked by quiet reflection. And a thin broth butt, they ate with a care that transformed the meal into a ritual. They exchanged small smiles, a gentle acknowledgement of the comfort found in shared warmth and familiar presence. Woolen shawls, thick scarves, and the soft fur of hats created layers of protection against the cold that permeated the world outside. Their faces were marked by fatigue, their eyes shadowed with the weight of experiences too complex for words. Soft carpets muffled footsteps, and the faint scent of beeswax lingered, mingling with the colder smells of leather and wool. Each carriage felt like a world unto itself, a delicate balance between the necessity of travel and the desire for home. The cards were worn and faded, the edges softened by countless games played under similar circumstances, yet their game was not one of chance alone. The news from the outside world was patchy at best, whispers of revolution in distant cities. Rumors of armies on the move, the distant rumble of change that seemed both inevitable and distant. But none of this was spoken aloud with urgency. Instead, it settled softly, like a background hum, a constant companion to the steady rhythm of the train. The hills were gentler here, rolling softly into the distance, and the occasional wooden fence hinted at farms abandoned or left to endure the winter's silence. Her thoughts seemed far away, perhaps carried by memories or the slow unfolding of hopes she dared not speak aloud. A few passengers lingered here, savoring the warmth and the chance to stretch weary limbs. Plates were passed around, shared in small gestures of kindness that transcended words. Her eyes reflected the muted landscape, and as the train crept forward, it was as if she traveled not only through Siberia. The windows shimmered with frost, tiny crystals catching the faint glow of the carriage lights. The train's whistles sounded low and mournful, a soft call that echoed through the stillness of the Siberian plains. It was a sound that seemed to belong both to the past and to the present, a reminder of journeys begun and journeys yet to come. But through time itself, moving between past and future, between the certainty of the rails and the uncertainty beyond, there was a quiet loneliness to this stretch of land, a feeling of waiting not for something to come, but for something to pass. It was a quiet assertion of normalcy, a small defiance against the uncertainty waiting beyond the windows. The houses were low and scattered, their roofs heavy with snow. Each passenger settled into the quiet comfort of the journey, carried gently between the known and the unknown, between the fading light of an old world and the quiet promise of a new one. Smoke curled faintly from chimneys, a slow curling ribbon of warmth in the cold air. A few figures stood near the tracks, bundled in layers, their faces turned toward the train. Their eyes held curiosity, but also a weariness born of long winters and uncertain futures. The train did not stop, and the passengers glimpsed these fleeting moments like ghosts passing through a dream. Yet inside, the train was a sanctuary, a moving cocoon of light and life amidst the endless white outside their window. The snow drifted steadily, each flake a tiny miracle of cold light. Passengers moved slowly through the carriages, their steps muffled by thick rugs laid across the wooden floors. Conversations were whispered. And the soft rustle of newspapers and the faint clinking of teacups created a gentle soundscape, a lullaby of everyday life amid extraordinary circumstances. In one compartment, an elderly woman sat with a small leather-bound book in her hands. The sky was a muted palette of grays and blues, clouds thick and low, pressing down as if to shelter the earth beneath. The air was crisp and clean, carrying with it the faint scent of pine and frozen earth. A reminder that despite the harshness of winter, life persisted beneath the snow's quiet embrace. She read slowly, her voice barely audible, reciting lines of poetry that spoke of winter's beauty and the passing of time. Her eyes, framed by delicate spectacles, held a mixture of sadness and hope as if the words she spoke connected her to something beyond the present moment, something both eternal and elusive. Nearby, a young couple shared a quiet meal. Their food was simple black bread, salted herring. The engine's rhythmic chug carried the train forward through twilight, a slow merging of day into night that softened the edges of the world. Passengers wrapped themselves in blankets, seeking comfort in textures that promised warmth. In one corner of the carriage, a group of men played cards by the flickering glow of a lantern. The train's corridors were narrow and lined with dark wood paneling, polished smooth by the touch of many hands. Outside, the landscape shifted again. Snow gave way to patches of frozen earth, cracked and uneven beneath the thin white blanket. At one point, the train slowed as it passed a small village. Back inside the carriages, the atmosphere was tinged with quiet anticipation. A young woman, seated by the window, traced delicate patterns on the glass with her finger. The dining car remained a place of quiet refuge. The aroma of black tea and boiled potatoes mingled with the faint, smoky scent of burning coal from the stove. Outside, night began to deepen. The train moved on through the night, a slender thread of warmth and life weaving its way across an immense and silent landscape. As the night deepened, the passengers gradually retreated into their private worlds. The soft rustle of curtains being drawn, the faint creak of hinges, and the settling of blankets created a symphony of quiet sounds. His eyes, steady and thoughtful, traced the silhouettes of trees as they passed dark shapes against the silver-white snow. There was a stillness to him, a measured calm that seemed to mirror the rhythm of the train. They spoke not of battles or politics, but of simpler things, the taste of home-baked bread, the feel of warm sunlight on their faces during summers long past, the gentle laughter of loved ones. Their breaths came slow and even, a peaceful rhythm that matched the pulse of the train. Coal fires crackled low in the stoves, their amber glow casting soft shadows on the walls. The scent of burning wood mixed with the faint aroma of tea and the subtle musk of woolen clothing. It was a scent that spoke of endurance, of quiet strength in the face of winter's long reach. Outside, the wind whispered softly, a gentle lullaby weaving through the trees, carrying the promise of dawn yet to come. The tracks creaked softly beneath the wheels, a steady pulse that echoed through the night. His words floated gently through the carriage, a soothing cadence that mingled with the train's hum. Listeners gathered close, their faces softened by the flickering candlelight, drawn into the quiet storytelling that bridged the distance between past and present. For a moment, the outside world seemed suspended, caught between ice and shadow, a fragile stillness that held its breath. Each passenger carried their own story, their own fragment of history, wrapped quietly within the fabric of the night. Together, they formed a mosaic of lives, intersecting briefly on this cold Siberian track. The steady sound of wheels on rails, the quiet murmur of distant voices, and the peaceful embrace of night all blend together, carrying you softly toward rest. In this moment, you are part of a timeless journey through winter, through history and gently into sleep. Their stories were small and intimate, a quiet tether to humanity amid the vast cold. The world outside might have been vast and silent, but inside, the small, steady rhythm of human presence persisted, soft, enduring, and quietly hopeful. He held a small leather notebook, its pages filled with sketches and notes, perhaps memories or observations from the journey. His fingers traced the edges tenderly, as if holding onto fragments of a world slowly fading away. It was a slow unwinding, as if the train itself was preparing to rest, carrying its precious cargo of lives through the long hours of the Siberian winter. In one compartment, a man sat quietly by the window, his face illuminated only by the faint glow of a candle. The landscape outside seemed endless, a vast canvas of quiet solitude. The snow lay thick and undisturbed, muffling the sounds of the night. Occasionally, the faint crunch of ice beneath the wheels punctuated the silence, a reminder that even in this frozen stillness, movement continued. The stars above shone dimly through a veil of clouds, their light softened by the endless expanse of white. Elsewhere in the train, a group of soldiers sat together, their voices low and steady. The children aboard were tucked away in their bunks, wrapped in thick blankets, and nestled close to their families. The warmth inside the carriages was a delicate balance against the harshness beyond. As the hours passed, the train crossed a frozen river, its icy surface reflecting the muted moonlight like a glass mirror. Inside, a writer's voice began again, softly reading aloud from a well-worn book. The train's journey was more than just a passage through space. It was a journey through time, memory, and emotion. And so the last train through the Siberian winter continued its steady course, a thread of warmth and life stretching across an endless frozen expanse. Imagine yourself now, settled in a warm seat beside a frost-kissed window, the gentle rocking of the train soothing your mind. The early morning hours were wrapped in a delicate stillness, as if the whole world held its breath beneath a thick blanket of snow. The train, a steady thread weaving its way through the vast Siberian expanse, moved slowly and deliberately, its wheels tracing a familiar rhythm on the frozen rails. Outside, the landscape is softened by the muted light of dawn. The sky, a pale wash of soft grays and blues that promise the coming of a new day. The trees stand quietly, their branches heavy with snow, bending gently under the weight as if bowing to the winter's quiet rain. Inside the carriages, the passengers were cocooned in warmth, sheltered from the biting cold that ruled the outside world. Imagine yourself sitting by the window, the glass chilled to the touch, patterns of frost etched like delicate lacework along the edges. Within the train, the hum of life stirred gently. Small tracks marked the paths of animals moving cautiously across the plains' hairs. Foxes and the occasional wolf leaving their fleeting marks on the white canvas. The trees, though bare and stiff with cold, held the promise of renewal, their branches poised to burst with green once the harsh winter thawed. Their conversation touched on simple things, weather reports, the state of the tracks ahead, the slow progress of the journey. The air was crisp and still, carrying the scent of pine and frozen earth, a reminder of the vast wilderness surrounding this slender thread of civilization. Books were opened, letters read and written, and quiet conversations exchanged in soft tones. The small comforts of companionship and shared experience wove through the carriages like a gentle current, linking strangers in a fragile web of connection. Each mile carried the passengers closer to a future unknown, their lives intertwined with the slow, steady progress of the train across the frozen land. The quiet hum of the train, the soft clatter of wheels on the tracks, and the serene beauty of the snowy world outside all blend into a comforting embrace. Here, in this moving sanctuary, the worries of the world seem to fall away, replaced by the simple rhythm of the journey and the promise of rest. Blankets rustled, soft whispers floated through the air, and the gentle rocking of the carriages rocked the minds of those aboard into a restful calm. The soft clatter of wheels on rails, the distant whistle of the engine, and the faint creak of the carriages all combined into a steady lullaby. Shadows stretched long and thin, and the snow glistened with a faint sparkle that suggested the warmth of a new day. The world outside was vast and still, a place of quiet majesty that unfolded slowly with each passing mile. Her fingers toyed absently with a small trinket, a locket, perhaps, or a keepsake from a life left behind. There was a softness to her expression, a mixture of nostalgia and quiet hope that seemed to ripple through the stillness. It was a song of movement and stillness, a melody that carried the passengers through the long hours with a quiet reassurance. There was an unspoken understanding in their tone, a shared sense of endurance and patience that shaped the rhythm of their days. Doors opened and closed with a soft creak, and the muted footsteps of those who rose early echoed softly along the narrow corridors. There was no rush here, no urgency, just the calm unfolding of another day on a journey that seemed to stretch endlessly across the frozen land. In one carriage, a man wrapped in a thick woolen coat carefully prepared his morning tea. The kettle, perched on a small stove, hissed softly as the water boiled, filling the air with the comforting aroma of warmth. The man's hands moved with practiced ease, a quiet ritual repeated each day to steady the mind and soothe the spirit. Nearby, a small group gathered quietly around a table. They spoke in low voices, their words a gentle murmur that blended seamlessly with the sounds of the train. The train itself seemed to breathe with the passage of time. Outside, the frozen landscape began to reveal subtle signs of life beneath the snow. The train's windows framed scenes of serene beauty. Frost crystals sparkled in the faint light like tiny jewels, and the snow-covered earth stretched away in endless quiet. Inside, the passengers settled into their routines with a calm acceptance. A woman sat quietly by herself, her gaze distant as she watched the snow drift past. Elsewhere, the steady breathing of sleeping passengers mingled with the distant murmur of the train, creating a peaceful symphony. As the train pressed onward, the sun began to rise higher, casting a pale golden light over the landscape. The journey was not just a movement through space, but a passage through a moment in time, a fragile, fleeting chapter in the story of an empire on the edge of transformation. Imagine yourself now, wrapped in a soft blanket, the gentle warmth of the carriage surrounding you. As the morning unfolded, the train continued its steady trek through the endless Siberian wilderness. Outside the window, the snow glistened softly, a pristine expanse that seemed to stretch infinitely beneath a pale, frosted sky. The world was hushed, as if wrapped in a delicate slumber, and the cold seemed to hold a quiet majesty, not harsh but serene. Inside the carriage, the passengers moved slowly, wrapped in layers of wool and fur, their breath forming gentle clouds in the crisp air when they spoke or sighed. The warmth inside was a small refuge from the vast, frozen landscape beyond. Soft murmurs of conversation floated through the compartments, blending with the occasional clinking of cups and the gentle rustle of clothing. The scent of pine mingled faintly with the crisp air inside the train, a subtle reminder of the natural world that stretched beyond the steel confines of the carriages. The gentle clink of keys, the low murmur of voices, and the occasional soft laughter created a sense of shared experience. The fragile community bound together by circumstance and distance. This was a world apart, a fragile bubble of humanity drifting through a silent sea of white. The pale morning light deepened to a soft gray, clouds moving slowly across the horizon. It reminded all aboard of the smallness of human endeavor against the scale of nature, yet also of the resilience required to move forward through such vast solitude. Each window framed a world both beautiful and unforgiving, a silent reminder of the constant struggle between man and environment. Occasionally, a faint sun would peek through, casting a delicate glow that made the snow sparkle like tiny diamonds scattered across the landscape. The snow seemed to hold its breath, and the train's progress slowed slightly, as if savoring the tranquility. Curtains were drawn gently, soft blankets unfolded, and the quiet murmur of settling passengers filled the air. The warmth of the stoves was carefully maintained, a small defiance against the encroaching cold and darkness. Soldiers carried the weight of duty and uncertainty, while diplomats bore the quiet burden of fragile negotiations. The steady rhythm of the wheels beneath you, the quiet murmur of voices, and the serene silence of the snowy world beyond combined to create a cocoon of calm. Here, in this moving sanctuary, the worries and noise of the outside world seemed to fall away, replaced by a gentle stillness and the soothing promise of rest. Yet despite their differences, they all shared this common thread, the slow, steady passage through the heart of winter aboard a train that connected distant worlds. The meal was simple but nourishing, a quiet ritual that punctuated the long hours with a moment of warmth and connection. Within its carriages, the passengers found moments of peace, a quiet harbor amidst the vast and frozen wilderness. And as the night approached, the world outside softened further, inviting all aboard to surrender to the gentle embrace of sleep. Plates were passed gently, and polite smiles exchanged as strangers became companions for a time. In one corner, an elderly man carefully tended to a small wood stove. The fire flickered with a quiet energy, casting soft shadows that danced gently along the walls. Her eyes were reflective, filled with a quiet longing and a deep contemplative stillness. Around her neck hung a simple pendant, catching the soft light as she shifted, a small reminder of home and hope. These moments of reflection offered a respite from the uncertainty that surrounded them, a way to capture the fleeting beauty of this transient journey. Her breath came slow and even, matching the gentle rhythm of the train as it rolled onward. The man's hands moved with slow certainty, feeding the flames and adjusting the vents to keep the warmth steady. This rhythm was the pulse of the journey, a constant reassurance that, despite the cold and the vastness outside, progress was being made mile by mile, moment by moment. His face was lined with years of experience, a calmness that spoke of countless journeys and many winters endured. Nearby, a young woman sat by the window, her fingers tracing the frosted patterns on the glass as she gazed out at the passing scenery. The clatter of wheels on iron rails created a soothing cadence, a steady heartbeat beneath the hushed conversations and the occasional sigh. As the train wound through the snow-covered forests, the branches of trees brushed close to the windows, their frost-laden limbs reaching out like silent sentinels. Passengers moved quietly through the narrow corridors, their footsteps softened by thick rugs and worn wooden floors. In a small dining car, the scent of freshly brewed tea mingled with the rich aroma of black bread and smoked fish, offering comfort against the cold outside. Outside, the sky shifted gradually as the day progressed. The vastness of the Siberian winter was both awe-inspiring and humbling. The passengers themselves were as varied as the landscape outside. Some were travelers seeking new beginnings, others exiles escaping the upheaval of empire. In the quieter compartments, the faint scratch of a pen could be heard as a passenger recorded thoughts or sketched scenes of the passing wilderness. As afternoon gave way to evening, the light softened once more, casting long shadows and bathing the landscape in a gentle, muted glow. The ritual of preparation for night began anew inside the carriages. Imagine yourself now, seated comfortably by a frosted window. The soft glow of a lantern casting a golden light over your surroundings. The train carried on through the Siberian winter, a slender thread of warmth and life weaving its way through an endless expanse of snow and ice. As the twilight deepened outside, the train moved steadily through the snowy Siberian expanse, its wheels tracing familiar lines over the frozen rails. The world beyond was a quiet wilderness, wrapped in shades of blue and silver beneath a sky brushed lightly with fading light. Imagine yourself seated by the window, the glass cool beneath your fingertips, watching the silent trees slip past in an unending procession. Inside, the warmth of the train was a gentle contrast to the cold that ruled the land outside. Soft murmurs and the faint shuffle of feet were the soundtrack to a long evening aboard this moving sanctuary. There was a gentle camaraderie in the shared experience of this long ride, a subtle weaving of stories and silences that connected strangers in a fragile, unspoken bond. The air was thick with the scent of wood smoke from the stoves, mingled with the faint aroma of brewed tea and rich, hearty food carried quietly from the dining car. The steady clatter of wheels on rails became a lullaby, a comforting rhythm that invited the mind to wander and the body to relax. Their voices were low and steady, weaving tales of distant places and past adventures. Moments of light and warmth amid the cold and darkness. Passengers retreated into their own thoughts, or the quiet company of others, each finding solace in the shared stillness of the long winter night. The repetitive actions offered a quiet focus, a way to steady the mind against the backdrop of an uncertain future. His gaze occasionally drifted to the window, where the snow-covered landscape slipped silently by. The cold seemed to press closer at these edges of civilization, where the warmth of human life was a fragile flame against the vast wilderness. The train was a vessel carrying hopes, fears, and memories across a land frozen in winter. A moving thread stitching together distant lives in the heart of an empire on the brink of change. Others remained awake, eyes fixed on the darkened window or lost in thought, the soft light of the lantern casting shadows that flickered and faded. The train's progress was slow but sure, a quiet journey through a landscape that was as much a place of the mind as of the earth. The passengers watched these brief glimpses of life with a quiet appreciation, knowing that beyond these points lay only endless white and silence. Each moment was a gentle reminder of life's persistence, even in the midst of uncertainty and cold. These sensations mingle with the warmth inside the train, creating a delicate balance between comfort and the wildness beyond. The clink of dishes being cleared, the soft rustle of blankets being arranged, and the quiet reassurances offered in soft tones all contributed to the calm, orderly atmosphere that pervaded the train. The world outside seemed to hold its breath once more, poised on the edge of waking. Inside the train, the passengers stirred gently, preparing for the day ahead, their faces calm and thoughtful. His face was etched with the lines of many winters, a calm endurance reflected in the quiet strength of his posture. The warmth of a thick blanket, the gentle rocking of the carriage, the soft murmur of voices in the distance create a cocoon of calm. Outside, the world is a vast and silent expanse, but inside, there is a gentle pulse of life, steady and reassuring. The trees, dark silhouettes against the pale sky, stood motionless, their branches heavy with frost. The silence was profound, broken only by the distant cry of a lone bird or the faint rustle of wind through the pines. Nearby, a young woman softly hummed an old folk tune, her voice barely above a whisper, a thread of warmth in the stillness. The passengers, a diverse mix of diplomats, exiles, soldiers, and travelers, settled into the rhythm of the journey. A man in a thick fur coat leaned back against the worn seat, his eyes half closed as he listened to the steady rhythm of the wheels. The train's interior was a patchwork of small scenes hands folded over a steaming cup of tea, a child's quiet breath as sleep began to take hold, a shared smile exchanged in the flickering glow of a lantern. Outside, the snow continued to fall lightly, settling in a soft, unbroken layer over the earth. As the night deepened, the train's journey took on a more introspective quality. In one compartment, a small group gathered around a flickering oil lamp, their faces softly illuminated as they exchanged quiet stories. Elsewhere, a soldier carefully cleaned his worn equipment by the faint light of a lantern, his movements deliberate and methodical. The train's staff moved through the carriages with practiced grace, tending to the needs of the passengers with gentle efficiency. Imagine yourself now in the quiet comfort of your own small space aboard the train. As the night wore on, the train passed through small villages and isolated stations, their lights flickering briefly in the dark. The rhythm of the journey was slow and deliberate, constant movement through space and time that brought with it both comfort and uncertainty. In the deeper stillness of the night, some passengers found sleep, their breathing slowing, bodies relaxing into the gentle sway of the train. The world outside seemed untouched by time, a frozen moment held in the quiet embrace of winter. Imagine the softness of the snow underfoot, the crispness of the cold air filling your lungs, and the subtle scent of pine and wood smoke carried faintly on the breeze. As dawn approached, the first pale light began to creep over the horizon, brushing the snow with a faint pink glow. This moment, suspended between night and day, between rest and activity, captured the essence of the journey, the slow passage through time and space, the quiet endurance of life amidst the vastness of the Siberian winter. As the soft light of dawn gradually brightened the horizon, the world outside the train transformed subtly. The snowy landscape, once a muted sea of pale blues and silvers, began to shimmer with delicate hues of rose and gold. Imagine yourself still seated by the window, the chill of the glass pressing gently against your palm. As you watch the day awaken slowly, like a quiet breath released after a long pause. Outside, the trees stood like sentinels, dark branches etched sharply against the brightening sky, frosted with crystalline snow that caught the early light. A child, still wrapped in thick layers, nestled against a mother's side, eyes heavy with sleep, but comforted by the steady motion and gentle voices around. A man in uniform, his face marked by the fatigue of endless travel and uncertain times, sipped slowly from a chipped tin cup, the warmth of the tea spreading through his hands as if to chase away the last chill of night. Occasional wooden villages appeared, nestled among snow-covered hills or lining the banks of frozen rivers. These glimpses of human life were brief, flickers of warmth and light in an otherwise endless winter. His hands rested lightly on a worn leather satchel, and his gaze was fixed thoughtfully on the passing scenery. His thoughts were slow and deliberate, matching the train's steady rhythm as he pondered the delicate balance of power shifting around him. The silence outside was profound, broken only by the occasional distant call of a bird or the whisper of wind weaving through the trees. The walls of the carriage seemed to absorb the quiet, creating a space removed from time and turmoil. Here, the world outside, the freezing cold, the political upheaval, the unknown future felt momentarily distant, replaced by the simple, comforting rituals of shared travel. This silence was not emptiness, but a presence of vast, encompassing stillness that invited reflection and rest. The voices around you softened to murmurs, the faint rustle of pages turning, the slow, steady breath of sleep beginning to claim those who were ready. The pause was brief, a mere breath in the journey, but it offered a moment to glimpse another facet of life in this frozen world, a glimpse of the quiet resilience of those who called Siberia home. Imagine the weight of such responsibility carried silently in the stillness of this snowy journey. Smoke rose lazily from chimneys, dissolving into the cold air. And sometimes the distant sound of church bells or the soft laughter of children reached the ears of those on board. But within the train, life continued in its steady, unhurried rhythm, a fragile beacon of warmth and hope carried across the endless winter. The passengers prepared for another night on the rails, wrapping themselves in blankets and settling into the comforting routine of the journey. The snow-covered plains stretched endlessly in every direction, broken only by the dark shapes of distant forests and the occasional frozen river glinting like a ribbon of glass. The steady rhythm of the wheels, the soft flicker of candlelight, and the quiet breath of sleep come together to create a sanctuary of calm. The train carried its passengers not just across miles of snow and ice, but through the fragile threads of hope and endurance that weave through even the coldest, darkest winters. Some read quietly by the fading light, others rested with eyes closed, lulled by the gentle motion and the quiet hum of the train. Conversations, when they occurred, were low and thoughtful, weaving stories and memories in a soft tapestry of human connection. Passengers watched the village fade behind them, their thoughts turning inward once more as the train resumed its journey through the vast, quiet expanse. Figures moved deliberately along narrow paths, their footsteps muffled by thick snowdrifts. Children's laughter floated faintly on the air, bright and fleeting, while the low murmur of daily routines provided a gentle soundtrack to this remote outpost. The air smelled faintly of pine and frozen earth, fresh and crisp, a reminder of the untamed wilderness just beyond the warmth of the train. They were part of something greater than themselves, a thread woven into the vast tapestry of history unfolding in this remote and rugged corner of the world. Each carried stories, hopes, and memories, some spoken softly in hushed conversations, others held quietly within. The lines on the page captured the stark beauty of the landscape, the sweeping curves of snow-drifted hills, the delicate frost patterns on window panes, the tall, dark silhouettes of pines reaching upward. Her quiet creativity offered a gentle counterpoint to the uncertainty beyond the train's walls, a soft act of preservation amid change. The staff moved with practiced ease, their footsteps quiet on the worn floorboards, offering bowls of steaming food and cups of dark, strong coffee. These simple rituals grounded the journey, small anchors of normalcy amid the vast and often overwhelming wilderness. Inside the carriage, the atmosphere remained calm and unhurried. The passengers moved with gentle deliberation, their motions soft and measured, as if still tethered to the lingering calm of night. A woman wrapped in a thick shawl carefully folded her knitting, the quiet click of needles easing into silence as she prepared to rest. Nearby, an older man stretched his stiff limbs slowly, his eyes reflecting a deep weariness, but also a quiet acceptance of the journey ahead. The rhythmic clatter of the train over the rails was a constant, soothing presence, a steady heartbeat carrying everyone forward through the vast Siberian expanse. Within this moving world, small moments of humanity unfolded quietly. The dining car, bathed in soft morning light, carried the faint aroma of porridge and fresh bread, inviting passengers to begin the day with modest sustenance. As the train carried on, the landscape outside shifted slowly but steadily. The passengers, though mostly strangers, shared an unspoken understanding of this journey's significance. One such passenger was a diplomat, traveling from the heart of a crumbling empire toward uncertain negotiations. Nearby, a young woman, her eyes bright despite the fatigue, sketched quietly in a small notebook. The winter landscape itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting patiently as the train made its slow way through the vastness. Inside, the soft glow of oil lamps and flickering candles cast gentle shadows, wrapping the passengers in a warm embrace. Imagine the sensation of sinking deeper into your seat, the fabric worn smooth by countless journeys, the gentle sway of the train lulling you closer to rest. The train's progress slowed slightly as it approached a small station, where a few travelers disembarked quietly into the crisp morning air. Smoke curled from the chimneys of small wooden houses, their roofs heavy with snow. The train's whistle sounded softly as it prepared to move on, a gentle call that echoed across the silent landscape. As the afternoon wore on, the light shifted again, softening into the muted glow of a Siberian winter day. Inside the carriages, the passengers embraced the slower pace of the day. The world outside remained a vast, frozen stillness, a landscape both beautiful and unforgiving. As evening approached once more, the train's lanterns were lit, casting a soft, golden glow that filled the compartments with gentle light. Imagine the sensation of that first yawn, the slow closing of eyes, the feeling of surrendering to rest as the train glides through the silent night. This was more than a journey across a frozen land, it was a passage through time, through history, and through the quiet moments that connect us all. The morning after, the train continued its slow, steady progress through the endless Siberian winter. Outside, the landscape stretched out like a vast, silent ocean of white, broken only by the dark lines of trees. The gentle hum of voices mixed with the occasional clink of porcelain cups and the soft rustling of newspapers as passengers settled into the new day. The scent of fresh bread and brewed tea wove through the air, grounding everyone in simple, familiar comforts. In the occasional frozen river glistening faintly beneath the pale sky, imagine yourself once again gazing out the window, feeling the cool glass against your skin as you watch the world drift quietly by. The rhythm of the journey, a constant and soothing presence. His hands rested loosely on his lap, fingers tracing absent patterns on a leather-bound notebook. The cold was almost tangible through the glass, a crispness that filled the air and brushed against the skin like a whisper. The silence of the wilderness was profound, a vast quiet that invited contemplation and calm. The pages contained sketches and notes, fragments of thoughts captured during this long journey through frozen lands. The small tables were scattered with plates of simple fare bread, cheese, smoked fish nourishment for the long day ahead. Smoke curled lazily from chimneys, drifting upward in delicate spirals before dissolving into the cold air. These brief glimpses of settlement brought a fleeting sense of connection to the wider world, a reminder of the lives lived beyond the train's protective cocoon. The warmth from the wood stove filled the room, creating a cozy haven from the frost just beyond the windows. The train wound its way through this timeless landscape, thread of human endeavor stitching together distant lives and places. Imagine the calm in his demeanor, the silent reflection in his eyes, as the train carried him further from what was known into the unknown. The scent of pine and wood smoke mixed with the faint aroma of fresh bread brought from nearby kitchens. Outside, the cold was sharper, a reminder of the harshness that lay just beyond the walls of the train. The sounds of life grew faintly louder, footsteps crunching on packed snow, the murmur of voices greeting arrivals and bidding farewells. Imagine sinking back into your seat, the fabric soft beneath your hands, the gentle sway resuming as the train pulled away from the station. The snowflakes began to fall once more, each one a delicate whisper against the vast silent expanse. The steady sound of the wheels on rails became a lullaby, a gentle, unchanging rhythm that invited rest and quiet dreaming. This was the journey through Siberia's winter, a slow passage through a frozen landscape in a frozen moment in time. The stillness of the forest seemed to press close, a quiet companion to the fleeting moments of human activity. Travelers exchanged soft greetings and quiet smiles, their faces marked by the long journey, but brightened by the small comforts of human contact. The station itself was simple wooden benches dusted with snow, lanterns casting warm pools of light, the low hum of a nearby stove offering welcome warmth. Inside the carriage, the warmth remained a soft refuge from the biting cold beyond. The soft murmur of the train, the muted colors of winter, their voices were low and measured, the words carefully chosen. The letters, worn and creased, spoke of home and hope, of distant families, and the fragile dreams that sustained them. The train was more than metal, and woodite was a vessel of stories, a moving home for those traveling through a world on the cusp of change. Their eyes met occasionally, sharing silent understanding in the shared solitude of this journey. In the steady beat of the journey, all combined to create a sense of peace amid the vast, untamed wilderness. Her breath fogged the glass gently as she exhaled, a soft rhythm that matched the train's movement. It was a call that marked progress, a signal that life moved forward despite the hardships and uncertainties. Imagine hearing that distant whistle as it fades into the vastness, a reminder of the journey's steady heartbeat. The warmth of her coat and the muffled sounds around her created a cocoon of comfort, a small island of calm in the endless expanse of winter. The faces around you carried the subtle marks of many miles traveled weariness, softened by moments of rest, eyes that held stories both spoken and silent. A quiet understanding seemed to linger in the air, a shared sense of moving forward despite the uncertainties that lay ahead. A young soldier, his uniform showing signs of wear, sat quietly by the window, his gaze distant yet steady. Her fingers trembled slightly, whether from the cold or the weight of her thoughts. It was hard to tell. Her gaze flickered to the passing trees, their branches heavy with snow, and then back to the quiet conversations around her. She listened intently, absorbing the soft murmur of voices, the gentle cadence of stories told in hushed tones. Across the aisle, a woman adjusted the scarf wrapped tightly around her neck. The train's slow rocking provided a steady lullaby, each sway a reminder of movement and progress through the vast Siberian expanse. The wood-paneled walls of the carriage were warm to the touch, polished smooth by countless hands. Lantern light flickered softly, casting shadows that danced lightly over the faces of those aboard. Outside, the snow was thick and unbroken, a pristine blanket covering hills and valleys alike. In the dining car, soft conversation mingled with the clatter of utensils and the gentle pouring of tea. The train passed through small clusters of wooden houses, their steep roofs laden with snow. Imagine the feeling of being cradled by this slow-moving vessel, each moment a gentle passage through time and space. In one compartment, two men sat facing each other, quietly exchanging letters. Elsewhere, a young woman closed her eyes, resting her head against the cold window. The train's whistle echoed softly as it rounded a bend. The sound carried faintly on the still air. The vast Siberian wilderness held many secrets, hidden beneath layers of snow and ice. Its silence was not emptiness, but a present ancient and enduring. As afternoon light softened to the muted glow of early evening, the train slowed once again, approaching a larger station nestled among the trees. Passengers prepared themselves for the brief pause, gathering belongings and adjusting clothing. Imagine stepping onto the platform, the crisp air filling your lungs, the cold biting gently at your cheeks. The brief pause was a moment to breathe, to stretch weary limbs and to connect with the quiet world beyond the train. Inside, the train's warmth awaited a sanctuary from the cold, a place to rest and reflect. The rhythm of the journey continued, steady and sure, carrying its passengers through the depths of winter and history. As night fell again, lanterns were lit, casting a soft glow over the sleeping compartments. Imagine the sensation of closing your eyes in this warm, moving refuge, the steady pulse of the train, the faint murmur of breathing around you, and the vast, silent world outside wrapped in white. As the train glided onward through the vast Siberian expanse, night deepened into a gentle stillness that wrapped the world outside like a soft, thick blanket.
Ow.
The carriage settled into a quiet hush, punctuated only by the occasional soft sigh of the train as it moved steadily over the rails. Imagine yourself resting comfortably in one of the softly padded seats, feeling the warmth radiate gently around you. A subtle contrast to the cold silence outside the window pane. The frozen landscape lay vast and untouched, the the moonlight casting a silvery glow over the endless stretches of snow. Trees stood tall and solemn, their branches heavy with frost, reaching up like quiet sentinels guarding the wilderness. The cold night air was palpable even through the thick glass, yet inside the train was a Havana world apart, cocooned in warmth and gentle light. The vast silence was almost sacred, a timeless stillness that stretched beyond the reach of human noise or hurry. It was a reminder of the vastness of this land, a place where time seemed to move differently, slowed by the weight of snow and cold. The rhythm of the train's wheels on the tracks was steady, almost hypnotic, a slow, soothing drumbeat that filled the quiet spaces between thoughts. A pair of gloves left on a seat, a folded letter tucked carefully into a pocket, the soft patter of footsteps as a conductor made his rounds, checking tickets with a calm, steady voice. God, the reassuring presence of strangers who share this journey silently, each wrapped in their own thoughts and memories. The engine's steady chug, the gentle vibration beneath the feet, and the occasional distant whistle blended into a quiet rhythm that cradled all aboard. These were moments of routine and order amid the uncertainty of a collapsing empire. Shadows flickered on the walls, creating a quiet dance that soothed the mind and invited contemplation. A child slept quietly on a mother's lap, their breaths rising and falling in time with the gentle rocking of the carriage. His face was lined with years and memories, his hands resting calmly on a cane. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead in vast constellations, their cold light twinkling across the snowy plains. The night was deep and full of quiet mystery, a vast silence that invited the mind to wander gently into dream. The train was a lifeline threading through the wilderness, slow-moving sanctuary, carrying its passengers through a world on the cusp of great change. The train moved on through the night, steady and sure, a beacon of continuity amid the shifting shadows of history. They spoke of home and future plans, their voices low and tender, weaving dreams in the quiet space between the train's steady pulse and the frozen world beyond. There was a quiet dignity in his stillness, a lifetime of journeys both physical and emotional carried silently in his gaze. The scent of wood smoke and pine drifts faintly through the air, mingling with the softness of blankets and the gentle warmth of a shared journey. The soft rustle of blankets and the occasional sigh were the only sounds in the stillness. The creak of leather seats, the rustle of heavy coats, and the soft murmur of voices now hushed, all contributed to the gentle symphony of nighttime on the rails. This constant motion became a kind of lullaby, guiding minds toward calmness, inviting the slow drift into dreams. The trees at its edge stood like dark reflections, their outlines shimmering faintly in the ice. Each passenger was alone with their own thoughts, yet connected by the shared experience of the journey, an unspoken bond formed by the long miles, traveled through snow and silence. The world outside seemed almost unreal in its quiet beauty, a painting in shades of white and silver, untouched and serene. It was a reminder of the journey itself, not just a passage through geography, but a movement through moments, each one a small step deeper into the heart of winter and history. In the dim light of the carriage, the faces of the passengers softened with fatigue. The young soldier who had been sketching earlier now leaned back, eyes closing gently, as his breathing slowed into a steady, peaceful rhythm. Across the aisle, the woman with the trembling fingers had wrapped her scarf more tightly. Resting her head against the window, the gentle motion of the train rocking her toward rest. The subtle smells of the train wood polish, faint traces of tobacco smoke, and the lingering aroma of tea mingled quietly in the air, comforting and familiar. Outside, the frozen world seemed to hold its breath beneath the star-studded sky. Within the train, small details came alive in the quiet. Imagine yourself noticing these details, the warmth of a blanket draped across your knees, the softness of a woolen hat pulled low against the chill. The train passed a frozen lake, surface smooth and glassy under the moonlight. Inside the compartment, the conversations had faded to whispers, the weight of the day giving way to the peaceful embrace of night. The train itself felt alive in this deep night, a slow-moving vessel carrying stories, hopes and fears through the endless Siberian winter. Imagine the sense of solitude and togetherness that filled this moving home. As hours passed, the cold deepened outside, but inside the train, The warmth persisted, a soft glow from lanterns and lamps casting golden circles of light. In one corner, an elderly man sat quietly, his eyes reflecting the gentle light as he stared out into the night. Nearby, a young couple whispered softly, their words almost inaudible. The hours slipped by unhurried, the train's pace a slow but unrelenting push forward through time and terrain. Imagine yourself slowly closing your eyes in this warm, moving refuge, the steady sound of the wheels, a comforting metronome in the background. This was the night passage of the Trans-Siberian train in 1917, slow voyage through a land both vast and intimate, cold, but filled with the warmth of human stories. And as you rest now, imagine the quiet determination of those aboard their hopes, their fears, their shared passage through a winter that seemed endless, but was also a journey toward something new. As dawn began to softly touch the horizon, the frozen Siberian landscape slowly shifted under a pale, tender light. Imagine yourself watching through the frost-stitched window as the first gentle hues of pink and gold stretch across the sky, softening the stark whites and grays of the endless snowfields. The cold air outside seems to hold its breath in the quiet early morning, and the world appears wrapped in a fragile calm, as if waiting for the day to unfold in slow motion. Inside the carriage, the passengers were still wrapped in the hush of sleep or quiet reflection. The soft murmur of waking voices was gentle, barely disturbing the comforting silence. Some rubbed sleep from their eyes, gazing out at the landscape that seemed both timeless and fragile, a frozen world momentarily caught between night and day. The train continued its steady journey, a long silver thread weaving through the vast wilderness. The rhythmic clatter of the wheels on the rails became a constant, reassuring presence, like a heartbeat that gently guides you through the morning. It was a slow, deliberate pace that allowed for thought and dreaming, a pace that seemed to respect the vastness of the land and the complexity of the lives on board. The world beyond the window was vast and sparse. Forests of tall, slender pines stretched into the distance, their branches dusted with frost that glittered like tiny crystals in the early light. Occasionally, the train passed small clearings where the snow lay undisturbed, a pure white canvas that seemed untouched by time or human hands. The silence here was profound, filled only with the soft whisper of the wind weaving through the trees. Imagine yourself noticing the subtle changes in the landscape, the way the snow softened under the morning sun. How the ice on the riverbanks began to shimmer with a pale blue sheen, and how the air held the faint scent of pine needles and fresh snow. These small details, so easy to overlook in the rush of everyday life, now seem rich with meaning and calm. Inside the train, the atmosphere was one of quiet routine, the soft clink of teacups, the rustle of newspapers being unfolded, and the gentle footsteps of attendants moving between compartments, all blended into a soothing soundscape. The passengers, though diverse in their backgrounds and reasons for travel, shared this moment of peaceful transition together. Among them was a young diplomat, his face pale but steady, eyes reflecting a mixture of hope and uncertainty. He sat quietly, hands folded, contemplating the journey ahead and the fragile future of the empire they were leaving behind. His thoughts drifted like the snowflakes outside, slow, deliberate, and delicate. Near him, a family wrapped in heavy cloaks whispered softly, their breath visible in the cold air as they spoke of home and distant places. The children's eyes were wide with wonder at the vastness outside. Their small hands pressed against the cold window as they traced imaginary shapes in the frost. The train's journey through the Siberian winter was more than a simple passage from one point to another. It was a slow unfolding of stories and lives, each passenger carrying memories and dreams like precious cargo. The steady movement through the snowfields seemed to mirror the passage of time itself, a gentle reminder that even in the harshest conditions, life continued with a quiet persistence. Imagine yourself settling deeper into the warmth of the carriage, feeling the soft weight of a blanket across your lap, the gentle hum of the train beneath your feet, and the quiet murmur of voices around you. This was a moment suspended in time, a small refuge from the vast cold world outside. The day lengthened gradually, and the pale morning light grew stronger, casting long shadows across the snow. The landscape outside seemed to glow softly, the frost sparkling like tiny stars scattered across the white expanse. The trees stood like ancient guardians, silent witnesses to the endless cycles of winter and thaw. Inside the compartments, life moved at its own measured pace. Passengers wrote letters by flickering candlelight, or sipped warm broth to stave off the chill that lingered despite the stove's steady heat. Conversations were low and thoughtful, often turning to memories of places left behind or hopes for what lay ahead. The train itself was a fragile island of warmth and human presence amid a frozen sea. Its engines breathed steadily, a slow pulse that carried everyone forward through the vast emptiness. The windows framed the world outside like paintings each, seen a quiet study in light and shadow, movement and stillness. Imagine yourself noticing the way the light played on the snowdrifts, how the frozen branches seemed to shimmer in the cold air, and how the distant mountains stood like silent sentinels on the horizon. The rhythm of the train's progress became a gentle meditation, inviting you to let go of worries and simply be present in the moment. The passage through Siberia was not without its challenges, of course. The cold was relentless, and the isolation could weigh heavily on the spirit. But there was also a deep resilience in the passengers, a quiet strength born of necessity and experience. They had learned to find comfort in small routines, the sharing of a hot meal, exchange of stories, the simple act of watching the snow fall outside the window. This slow, snowy journey was a passage not only through space, but through time, through an empire in transition, and through lives caught between the past and an uncertain future. The train carried them all forward, a moving thread of warmth and humanity weaving through the silent, frozen wilderness. As the morning wore on, the sun climbed higher, and the world outside began to thaw slightly, promising the slow return of life beneath the snow. The trees shimmered with droplets of melting frost, and the distant rivers gleamed with renewed motion beneath their icy coats. Inside the train, the passengers stirred with a quiet energy. Some read quietly, their eyes tracing the lines of distant letters, while others simply watched the world glide by, lost in thought. The steady hum of the train was a constant companion, a gentle reminder of the journey's progress. Imagine yourself leaning back, eyes half closed, the warmth of the train and the soft murmur of voices lulling you into a state of calm. The vastness of the Siberian winter outside might seem daunting, but here, in this moving refuge, there was a sense of peace and continuity. This was a journey through a changing world, a world where empires faded and new possibilities began to take shape. The Trans-Siberian train carried its passengers through the twilight of an era, moving slowly but surely toward the dawn of a new day. As the train pressed onward through the vast Siberian wilderness, the afternoon light softened and began to wane, slipping slowly toward the horizon. Imagine yourself once again by the frosted window, watching the world outside transform subtly as the day begins to fade into evening. The sun, now a pale, glowing orb, casts long. Gentle shadows that stretch across the rolling drifts of snow, painting the landscape with hues of soft lavender and muted gold. The air inside smells faintly of wood smoke and tea, a scent that is both grounding and soothing. Mingling with the subtle aroma of aged paper from the books and letters quietly read by the passengers. Inside the carriage, the atmosphere is calm, but quietly alive with the rhythm of the journey. The steady clatter of wheels on rails provides a slow, steady, pulsing, almost hypnotic beat that carries passengers forward through space and time. Her eyes reflect the flickering light of the setting sun, filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. She is leaving behind a life that will never be the same, stepping into the unknown with only the rhythm of the train to guide her. Some close their eyes, letting the gentle rocking of the carriage and the soothing sound of the rails lull them toward rest. Others write quietly by candlelight, the soft flicker of flame casting warm, dancing shadows on their faces and the pages of their journals. The vast expanse of white seems endless, broken only by occasional flashes of dark tree trunks or the glimmer of frozen rivers winding like silver threads through the landscape. This is a place where time feels suspended, where the slow march of the seasons governs the rhythm of life and death, hope and despair. The melody is gentle and slow, weaving through the compartments like a thread of warmth, wrapping the passengers in a shared sense of peace and connection. It is a reminder that even in the coldest, most uncertain places, there is room for tenderness and hope. Imagine yourself sinking deeper into the warmth and stillness, your breath slow and even, your mind drifting like the snowflakes outside, silent and free. The soft clink of a teacup nearby reminds you of the small comforts she holds on to rituals of warmth and familiarity that ease the weight of the cold and the unknown. The cold air outside holds the scent of pine and frost, crisp and clean, while inside, the train carries its fragile human cargo through the long Siberian night. The low murmur of conversations blends with the occasional scrape of a chair or the soft footsteps of attendants moving through the compartments, ensuring comfort and warmth. It is a moving sanctuary amid the vastness, a place where stories unfold and lives continue, despite the cold and isolation. The train is more than a vehicle, it is a vessel of memory, resilience, and quiet hope. The snowdrifts take on a deeper shade of blue, and the trees become dark silhouettes against the fading light. The cold air sharpens, and a hush falls over the landscape, broken only by the distant call of a bird or the soft rustle of wind through the bare branches. The vast Siberian night stretches out beyond a vast silent world, holding its breath in the stillness. Inside, the warmth and quiet companionship of the train create a refuge, a soft place to rest and dream. Imagine yourself wrapped in the familiar comfort of a well-worn coat or a thick blanket, feeling the gentle warmth that contrasts with the cold outside. The afternoon wanes, and the train passes through small villages, where wooden houses stand quietly against the encroaching cold. The world outside feels distant and gentle, softened by the twilight and the falling snow. You are part of this quiet procession, moving steadily through the vastness of Siberia, carried by the steady pulse of wheels and tracks. These tiny outposts, dusted with snow, seem almost frozen in time, their chimneys puffing thin trails of smoke that rise and disappear into the crisp air. Among them, exiles wrapped in somber thoughts, diplomats burdened with the weight of a crumbling empire, and soldiers whose faces tell stories of endurance and quiet sacrifice. Though their lives are varied and their stories often heavy, there is a shared understanding of the fragility and resilience that bind them together on this journey. Quiet smiles are exchanged, small acts of kindness offered without words, and the unspoken comfort of human presence fills the space. Each person's story is a thread woven into the larger tapestry of this journey that is as much about the passage through a physical landscape as it is about the passage through moments of change and uncertainty. Imagine the lives within those homes, families gathered around stoves, sharing stories by firelight, wrapped in woolen shawls and heavy boots, their voices soft but full of warmth. Amid the silence of the Siberian plains, on board, the passengers come from many walks of life, each carrying their own burdens and hopes as the train winds its way deeper into the heart of winter. Picture the young woman sitting by the window, her hands folded in her lap, staring out at the snow-covered forests. Outside, the world grows quieter as the sun sinks lower. Inside the train, the passengers begin to settle into the slower, more reflective pace that evening brings. Imagine yourself closing your eyes for a moment, breathing in the calm and the steady rhythm of the train. The train's passage is slow and deliberate, a steady heartbeat in the frozen silence. Within the carriage, a gentle camaraderie begins to form among the passengers. Imagine the soft murmur of a lullaby in a distant corner of the train, voice singing quietly to a child as the evening deepens. As darkness fully descends, the windows frame a night sky that is vast and sparkling, filled with countless stars, shimmering like distant fires. The gentle rocking of the carriage becomes a steady lullaby, the wheels singing their quiet song as they trace the rails across the frozen land. The journey through this winter wilderness is a passage through both space and emotion. As you rest here, carried forward by the steady rhythm of the train, you are invited to let go of the day's worries and drift gently towards sleep. I say, with the wheels turning and the night deepening, the slow journey continues through frozen forests and endless snows. Through lives intertwined by fate and circumstance, toward whatever dawn may come. As the train drifts deeper into the Siberian winter night, the landscape outside is cloaked in darkness. But the world inside the carriage remains softly alive, a small island of warmth and quiet life amid the vast cold. Each moment is a delicate balance between motion and stillness, a passage through a silent world where time seems to move with measured grace. Imagine yourself settled into a comfortable seat, the fabric worn but familiar, the faint scent of old wood and polished brass mingling with the aroma of warm tea that fills the air. Nearby, a soldier unwraps a simple meal bread, cheese, perhaps a slice of smoked fish, sheeting slowly. Savoring the familiar tastes that remind him of home, he writes slowly, his pen scratching quietly in the stillness, capturing fleeting thoughts and observations. The words flow with a gentle deliberation, a way to anchor himself amid the shifting tides of history and personal fate. His hands, roughened by years of hardship, move with a careful deliberation, each bite a small comfort in the midst of uncertainty. The cold air carries the scent of pine and frost, crisp and invigorating. The world feels both immense and intimate, a place of vast silences and small, enduring moments. The gentle rocking of the train and the distant sound of the steam engine create a rhythmic backdrop, slow, steady pulse that soothes like a heartbeat. The quiet is profound, broken only by the distant call of a night bird or the soft crackle of ice shifting beneath the weight of the cold. A child nestles against a parent, eyes heavy with sleep, comforted by the steady warmth and the sound of the rails. An elderly man wrapped in a thick shawl hums a soft tune, his voice low and steady. A pair of friends share a quiet joke, their laughter a gentle ripple in the calm. Oh, yous. Conversations are whispered, steps are careful and light. And the steady rhythm of the train's wheels continues its gentle song. These small details anchor you in the moment, inviting a sense of calm and peace. The world outside is vast and silent, but inside there is warmth, life, and a gentle rhythm that invites rest. It is a passage marked by endurance, patience, and the simple act of moving forward. It is a world both beautiful and forbidding, where life persists in quiet, determined ways. The initial buzz of movement and adjustment gives way to a more profound stillness. Some passengers have fallen into quiet sleep, their breathing slow and even. The train is a cocoon, a moving refuge against the harshness of the world outside. The vastness of the Siberian night and the intimacy of the carriage combine to create a unique sense of stillness and motion, a balance that invites reflection, calm, and rest. Snowflakes begin to fall again, thin and delicate, swirling gently against the darkened glass. The world outside is transformed once more, wrapped in a soft, silent blanket that muffles sound and softens edges. The train moves steadily forward, cutting a slow path through the quiet winter night. It carries stories, memories, and hopes, all intertwined within its wooden walls and iron rails. She traces the frost patterns on the glass with her finger, lost in thought. Its wheels hum a constant lullaby, a song of endurance and quiet determination. The engine's steady breath releases clouds of steam that drift upward, momentarily visible in the cold night air before dissolving into the darkness. Her journey is one of many, an escape from a past that no longer holds promise, a step toward an uncertain future. Yet in this moment, surrounded by the quiet hum of the train and the gentle whisper of the wind, she finds a fragile peace. Others remain awake, gazing out into the dark, their thoughts drifting like the snowflakes that swirl softly against the window panes. There are diplomats burdened by the weight of empire, their eyes tired but alert, scanning the horizon for signs of what is to come. Exiles whose faces bear the quiet resignation of those who have lost much, yet still carry within them a spark of hope for the future. Soldiers, too, who have weathered battles and betrayals, now finding solace in the steady rhythm of the rails. The night stretches on, vast and infinite, punctuated only by the occasional flicker of light from distant hamlets or the fleeting glow of a lantern held by a lone traveler crossing the snow-covered plains. Inside, the passengers settle into the quiet rhythms of their long journey. Some lean against the windows, eyes half closed, tracing the blurred shapes of frost-covered trees as they slide past. Others gather softly in small groups, speaking in hushed tones, their voices blending into the gentle murmur of the carriage. The shared sense of weariness is palpable, but so is the quiet determination to endure this passage through a world transformed by cold and change. Imagine the warm glow of a candle flickering on a small table, casting gentle shadows that danced lightly on the worn wood panels. The stories carried by the passengers are many and varied, each one a thread in the larger fabric of history unfolding around them. Imagine the soft rustle of papers as a diplomat pulls out a worn journal, its pages filled with notes and reflections. Outside, the night deepens, and the sky becomes a vast expanse of black velvet sprinkled with countless stars. Inside the carriage, the atmosphere shifts subtly as the hours pass. Imagine a young woman sitting quietly in her compartment, the soft glow of a lantern illuminating her delicate features. The train itself seems almost alive, a vessel carrying its human cargo across the vast expanse of Siberia. Imagine the sensation of the slow, rhythmic movement, the gentle sway and vibration beneath you, as a form of comfort. As the night wears on, the train passes through stretches of forest where the trees stand tall and silent, their branches heavy with snow. Inside the carriage, the passengers' lives unfold in small, intimate moments. Imagine yourself here, part of this moving tapestry, surrounded by the faint sounds, the soft lights, and the subtle rhythms of a journey that stretches across time and space. As the hours slip by, the landscape outside shifts subtly. Inside, the atmosphere remains hushed but alive with the quiet pulse of life. Imagine the sensations that come with this slow journey, the cool touch of the window pane beneath your fingertips, the faint warmth of the lantern's glow, the soft weight of a blanket across your lap. And so, the night deepens, the train rolls on. And the passengers, each carrying their own stories and hopes, move quietly through the vast expanse of frozen Siberia. As the journey stretches onward, the train's gentle sway becomes almost hypnotic, lulling those aboard into a tranquil rhythm. The passengers, wrapped in their layers against the Siberian chill, find comfort in the familiar, if modest, surroundings of their compartments and carriages. The soft murmur of quiet conversations, the faint clinking of teacups, and the occasional creak of the wooden seats combine into a gentle symphony of sounds, a lullaby of human presence against the vast silence outside. The faint scent of burning wood mingles with the earthiness of woolen blankets and the subtle perfume of strong tea. Each breath you take is a quiet reminder of this delicate sanctuary in the heart of winter. Imagine yourself settled into this quiet world, where time seems to stretch. This small act of creation becomes a thread of continuity, connecting the transient moment on the train to something more enduring. Testament to the human spirit's need to make sense of a changing world, and fold the boundaries between past, present, and future softening as the train moves steadily through the night. Her eyes, though tired, hold a quiet strength. She listens to the soft murmur of voices, the click of the train wheels, and the distant howl of the wind, each sound weaving into the tapestry of memory that surrounds her. The train's wheels hum their steady song on the rails, a sound both reassuring and timeless. It is a rhythm that invites contemplation, a chance to drift between wakefulness and sleep. It is a reminder of the human capacity to find light even in the darkest of times. In this place, between movement and stillness, past and present, she finds a fragile peace. The cold outside seems to grow more intense, wrapping the world in a thicker shroud of white. Others keep their eyes open, gazing out at the shifting world, their thoughts drifting like snowflakes carried on a gentle breeze. Each person aboard carries their own story, their own hopes and fears, yet they are united by this passage through the cold and darkness. The train itself becomes a symbol of connection, a thread tying together distant places and disparate lives. Yet inside, the warmth and light persist, a small bubble of life and continuity. The way the cold seems to make every breath more vivid and every sound more distinct. The stars fade slowly, one by one, as a faint glow creeps over the horizon. The forest darkens in the early light, and the snow sparkles softly, catching the morning's first touch. Their hands are steady, but carry the subtle marks of fatigue and worry. Each card laid down is part of a fragile ritual, a brief escape from the weight of their realities. It is a quiet reminder of continuity and change, the endless cycle that frames our lives. Their laughter, though soft, is a warm current flowing through the stillness. The rhythm of the train continues, steady and sure, as the journey carries on toward an uncertain future. Outside, the landscape remains a blur of white and black. The endless forest cloaked in snow like an ancient tapestry woven from frost and shadow. Smoke curls upward from chimneys, dissipating slowly into the cold air. These moments of stillness and light seem like small islands in the vast sea of winter, reminders of endurance and hope amid harshness. The faint glow of candlelight or firelight flickers through frosted windows, suggesting warmth and life in these remote outposts. The train passes by like a whisper, barely disturbing the quiet solitude of these frozen settlements. The moon hangs low, a pale guardian watching over the rails as they cut their way through the wilderness. The cold presses in beyond the train's walls, but inside, the warmth from the coal-fired stove spreads through the carriage like a slow, comforting breath. In the dim light, the faces of the passengers are softened, their expressions relaxed as they succumb to the gentle fatigue brought on by the journey. Some rest their heads against the window, eyes closed, while others sit quietly, lost in their thoughts or the quiet companionship of a shared journey. The atmosphere is one of peaceful endurance, a collective surrender to the slow passage of time. Among them, a few travelers hold closer to their stories, their eyes reflecting the weight of history and personal struggle. A young man, perhaps an artist or writer, jots down impressions in a small notebook, capturing fleeting images and emotions that the Siberian night seems to inspire. His hand moves slowly, deliberately, as if tracing the contours of a dream he hopes to hold on to. Imagine the faint scratch of his pen on paper, a gentle sound barely audible amid the larger hush. Nearby, an older woman wraps a knitted shawl more tightly around her shoulders. Outside, the forest gives way now and then to small clearings, where wooden huts stand clustered like forgotten memories. Imagine the soft crunch of snow underfoot, the crisp air tingling with cold, and the muted sounds of life continuing quietly beyond the train's brief presence. Back inside the carriage, the journey through the night unfolds with gentle predictability. In one corner, a group of soldiers share a quiet card game, their voices low and casual. Imagine yourself watching this scene, the contrast between the harshness of their lives and the gentle moment of camaraderie. As the hours slip by, the train moves ever deeper into the Siberian wilderness. The passengers begin to settle more fully into the embrace of the night. Some draw their curtains, cocooning themselves in shadows and quiet. Imagine the sensation of this slow, steady journey, the subtle vibrations beneath you, the occasional soft whistle of the train echoing through the night air in the midst of this. A sense of shared humanity lingers. Outside, the first hints of dawn begin to pale the night sky. Inside, the passengers stir gently, the night's rest easing some of their weariness. Imagine this moment of transition, the soft shift from night to day, darkness to light, sleep to wakefulness. And so the train rolls on, through the Siberian winter, through history, and through the quiet moments that connect us all. As the train continues its unhurried journey through the endless Siberian expanse, the quiet world inside each carriage settles into a rhythm all its own. The harshness of the outside cold is softened by the steady warmth within, like a fragile ember glowing amid the vast frost. The sky above is a muted gray, thick with the promise of snow yet to fall. Some sit by the windows, watching the slow procession of trees and snowdrifts glide past. Perhaps she is leaving behind a lifelong held, or perhaps she carries memories she wishes to hold close. Imagine the soft rustle of her coat as she shifts in her seat, the gentle brushing of fabric against worn leather. Others are nestled in corners, their eyes heavy with sleep or lost in thought. These small sounds create a soothing backdrop, a lullaby of everyday life moving quietly forward despite the turmoil that ripples beneath the surface. His gaze is steady, focused on the distant horizon where sky meets snow. Curtains are drawn to shield passengers from the cold and the darkness beyond. The glow from oil lamps flickers gently, casting a warm amber light that softens edges and blurs the lines between spaces. Snowflakes begin to fall softly, blanketing the world in white once more. The gentle rocking of the train matches the slow, even rhythm of your breath, inviting rest and peace. The forest stands like a silent sentinel, its dark branches outlined against the pale sky. Her voice is soft and steady, a gentle thread woven through the stillness of the train car. The child's eyes flutter closed, the world shrinking to the warmth of a mother's embrace, and the steady pulse of the train beneath them. The train cuts through this stillness, a moving island of warmth and light. The train's movement becomes a gentle cradle, rocking its passengers toward rest. The soft sounds inside the rustle of blankets, the sigh of a sleeper, the muted turning of a page form, a quiet chorus that lulls the mind toward peace. The world begins to stir beneath the snow, and the train's journey continues, carrying its passengers forward through history, through time, and through the quiet spaces between moments. A young man writes letters by the light of a small lantern, his pen moving slowly across paper as if marking time. The vastness of the wilderness is both humbling and serene, a reminder of nature's quiet power and enduring calm. The train moves steadily forward, a slender silver thread stitching together distant places and histories. The troubles and noise of the world fall away, replaced by the steady heartbeat of the train and the vast, silent beauty of the Siberian winter. Perhaps these words will never reach their destination, but in their creation lies a quiet dignity. His weathered face tells a story of many winters endured, of landscapes crossed and memories gathered like stones along a path. Imagine yourself leaning back, eyes half closed, letting the notes carry you into a realm of calm reflection. The soft click of his cane resting against the floor punctuates the silence, a small but steady rhythm in the quiet. The collective breath of the train is a low hum of life's soft footsteps on wooden floors, the delicate clink of china, the murmur of voices too low to carry far. Their melodies, though restrained, weave through the air like a gentle breeze, a balm for weary souls. The soft strumming of a balalaika mingles with the quiet hum of voices, creating an atmosphere of gentle companionship. The air, even inside the carriage, feels crisp and fresh, carrying with it the scent of pine, frozen earth, and the faintest trace of coal smoke from the engine. Imagine yourself there, tucked beneath a thick woolen blanket. The gentle sway of the train beneath you, a comforting heartbeat. The winter landscape remains a vast white canvas, interrupted only by the silhouettes of leafless trees and the occasional distant cluster of wooden huts. The passengers, wrapped in their own worlds, move with quiet purpose. Among the travelers, a few faces stand out. There is a woman wrapped in a thick fur coat, her eyes reflecting a quiet melancholy as she gazes at the snow. The smell of black bread, salted fish, and strong tea fills the air, comforting and familiar. Small groups gather here, seeking warmth not only from the stove, but from the shared comfort of company. The conversations are gentle, careful, often about the mundane details of travel or the fleeting glimpses of home they hope to see again. Not far from her, an elderly man sits by the window, his hands folded in his lap. In the dining car, the subdued light casts long shadows over tables set with simple meals. Imagine the clink of teaspoons against porcelain cups, the low laughter of a shared joke, the soft sighs that come with exhaustion and relief. Outside, the landscape continues to shift in its slow, silent way. As night approaches once again, the interior of the train grows dimmer. Imagine the feeling of sinking deeper into this cocoon of quiet, the weight of the day easing from your limbs. In one carriage, a small group of musicians quietly tune their instruments, preparing for a modest performance. The music does not rise in volume or urgency, but remains calm and measured, like a whispered story told by a fireside. Amid the passengers, stories drift silently like snowflake snippets of conversations, fragments of memories, the unspoken fears and hopes held close to the heart. Nearby, a mother soothes her child, singing a lullaby that has traveled through generations. Imagine this. Seen the intertwining of lives on this slow journey, each passenger wrapped in their own dreams and memories, yet bound together by the shared passage through the Siberian night. Outside, the moon rises high, casting a pale light over the snow-covered land. As the hours slip by, the boundary between wakefulness and sleep blurs. Imagine yourself here, in this moment of transition. As dawn approaches, a delicate pink hue colors the horizon. As the dawn slowly softens the night's darkness, the train rolls on through the waking Siberian landscape. The pinkish light spills gently over the frozen expanse, casting long, delicate shadows across the snow. The trees, tall and skeletal, stand like quiet sentinels on either side of the track. The low murmur of waking voices blends with the creaking of wooden floors and the soft rustling of clothing. Imagine the sensation of stretching limbs beneath thick blankets, the comforting warmth of shared body heat inside a small, moving world. The scent of fresh bread, strong black tea, and smoked fish mingles with the subtle aroma of coal and wood smoke from the engine. Imagine the tactile comfort of a warm cup held between chilled fingers, the steam rising in gentle curls toward the soft light. The Russian Empire is teetering on the edge of transformation, and many aboard this train are caught in the currents of change, diplomats heading into uncertain negotiations, exiles fleeing turmoil, soldiers bound for distant postings. Their branches, dusted with fresh snow, shimmer faintly in the early light. The train itself becomes a symbol of endurance, moving forward despite the weight of history pressing down on its iron rails. The vastness is both humbling and soothing, a reminder of the world's immensity in the small, steady passage of time. The silence here is profound, broken only by the rhythmic chug of the locomotive and the occasional distant call of a lone bird. Passengers share small fragments of their stories, snippets of homes left behind, fleeting hopes for the future, and memories of places far away. Passengers find moments of solitude, writing letters, reading worn books, or simply resting their heads against frosted windows. Their laughter is a light, delicate sound, woven seamlessly into the ambient hush. The rhythm of rural existence marked by seasons, survival, and quiet community echoes softly through the passing landscape. The engineers and workers maintain a watchful vigilance, their actions deliberate and steady. Imagine the low murmur of their voices carried through the corridors, the measured steps of boots on icy platforms, and the careful adjustments to levers and gauges. Their presence is a gentle reminder of hope and renewal, amid the somber tones of winter. The engine's steady chug is a heartbeat that resonates through the carriages, grounding all aboard in the present moment. The sky deepens into shades of indigo and silver, stars beginning to shimmer faintly above. Passengers settle into their bunks or chairs, the pace of the day slowing to a gentle, soothing close. Inside the train, lamps are lit, casting pools of warm glow that flicker softly against wood paneling and frosted glass. The rhythm of the rails becomes the rhythm of your breath, steady and slow, carrying you deeper into calm and comfort. Imagine the softness of their muffled voices, the patter of small feet on wooden floors, and the faint jingling of toys tucked beneath scarves. The train moves steadily forward, a glowing thread of warmth and life woven through the frozen wilderness. The gentle sway of the train becomes a lullaby, inviting quiet contemplation and gentle rest. Each voice is soft, measured, carrying the weight of unspoken thoughts and feelings. The atmosphere is one of quiet companionship, the rhythm of their lives woven together by the train's steady motion. The world is vast and silent, but inside the train, there is a sense of calm continuity, a steady journey through time, history, and the quiet spaces of the night. Others close their eyes, surrendering to the train's lullaby as it rocks them gently towards sleep. The air remains crisp, clean, and impossibly still, as if the world itself is holding its breath. The houses are simple, their roofs heavy with snow, smoke curling upward from chimneys in thin, steady streams. Imagine the sight of frosted windows, the glow of candlelight inside, and the faint sound of voices carried briefly on the cold breeze. Imagine yourself gazing out a frost-framed window, watching the vast wilderness gradually come to life in a muted symphony of pale hues and subtle movements. The sky, once a deep canvas of stars, now shifts to a soft gray blue, hinting at the promise of a day that will unfold with slow certainty. Inside the carriage, the passengers begin to stir from their slumber. A steward quietly moves along the aisle, gently rapping on doors and curtains. His voice calm and unhurried as he offers soft greetings to those who begin to wake. His presence is a quiet reassurance, a reminder that despite the harshness outside, there is kindness and order within. Breakfast is served in the dining car, its windows fogged slightly from the contrast between cold air and warm steam. Conversations remain low, respectful of the fragile morning calm. Among the travelers, some carry the marks of recent hardship, their faces pale and eyes heavy. Imagine the subtle tension beneath the calm exterior, the quiet resilience of those who travel through this vast, cold land. As the journey continues, the landscape changes subtly. Dense forests give way to open plains, where snow stretches uninterrupted to the horizon. Imagine the feeling of infinite space outside, the kind that invites reflection and calm. Inside, the train's interior is a contrast of warmth and muted activity. A group of children, bundled in thick coats and fur hats, play softly in one carriage. The children's innocence and energy bring a subtle brightness to the journey, quiet promise that life continues even in the most challenging times. As the afternoon stretches on, the train passes through small villages and isolated farmsteads. These brief glimpses of life beyond the train offer a connection to a world that feels distant yet familiar. The train's journey is not without its challenges. Tracks sometimes become hidden beneath fresh drifts of snow, requiring careful navigation and occasional pauses. Their skill and dedication ensures that the train continues its path, a lifeline threading through the cold vastness. As evening approaches once again, the light softens to a gentle twilight. Imagine the quiet preparation for night curtains drawn, beds made, the soft rustling of linens. Some find comfort in ritual, a sip of tea, a whispered prayer, the reading of a letter by lamplight. Outside, the Siberian winter night stretches wide and still, a vast blanket of snow and silence. Imagine yourself here in this moment of quiet, surrounded by the soft sounds of rest and travel. With the train's steady motion and the hush of the snow-covered world outside, you feel the gentle pull of sleep, the soft descent into peaceful rest. As the journey on the Trans-Siberian Railway nears its conclusion, the night deepens around the train like a vast, velvety cloak. Imagine yourself in the cozy warmth of your carriage, soft hum of the engine beneath you blending seamlessly with the rhythmic clatter of wheels over steel rails. Outside, the world is cloaked in darkness. Only the pale glow of a few distant stars, twinkling faintly above the endless expanse of snow. The passengers are wrapped in a contemplative silence, each lost in their own thoughts, or lulled by the steady progress through the Siberian wilderness. The air inside the carriage holds a gentle warmth, thick with the comforting sense of wood, leather, and the faint trace of boiled tea. Imagine the softness of the blankets wrapped around you, the subtle creak of the wooden seats as passengers settle into a quiet stillness. Conversations have dwindled to hushed whispers or gentle sighs, as if the very atmosphere encourages calm and rest. A woman softly hums an old folk tune, its melody weaving through the air like a gentle breeze, bringing a moment of peace amid the silence. Imagine yourself lying back against a padded seat or curled beneath a thick blanket, your eyes slowly closing as the gentle rocking merges with your breath. The soft clink of china and the murmur of voices add a delicate layer of comfort to the otherwise still night. Imagine the feel of a warm cup in your hands, the slight bitterness of the tea mingling with the sweetness of a small biscuit. The world outside fades into a quiet blur, the cold vastness of Siberia held at bay by the warmth inside. This final stretch of the journey carries a different weight, one softened by the rhythm of time and the growing distance from the turmoil that shadows the Russian Empire beyond the windows. The world feels vast and quiet, filled with the possibilities of what lies ahead. Imagine the way the light inside the train softens as the lamps flicker, casting long, warm shadows on the walls. Imagine yourself standing there, breathing in the cold air, wrapped in the soft glow of lamplight and the enduring rhythm of the rails beneath your feet. The snow continues to blanket the earth in pure white, stretching endlessly beneath the starry sky. But for now, you are here, at the edge of a vast and silent world, embraced by warmth and quiet, ready to rest and dream. Imagine the stillness of the forest, where even the slightest sound is muffled by thick layers of ice and snow, a quietness that seems almost sacred. Soldiers sit quietly, their eyes distant, weighted by the anticipation of uncertain futures. Each stop brings a brief stir of activity, a few footsteps on the platform, the rustle of coats, the whisper of farewells. The journey that began in the chill of a Siberian winter has brought them through a landscape of history, change, and quiet endurance. Boring, imagine the feeling of stepping from the train into the crisp night air, the cold biting softly at your cheeks, but also bringing a sense of renewal. Go warm, imagine the fleeting exchanges, warm smiles, and quiet gestures that mark these moments of transition. Exiles gaze out windows frosted with delicate patterns, watching the silent forests blur past, perhaps imagining lives left behind or those yet to come. The gentle glow envelops the carriages, turning familiar shapes into serene silhouettes. Outside, the snow is a vast, quiet mirror, reflecting the faint light of the moon and stars in delicate shards of silver. Among the travelers, a quiet camaraderie lingers, strangers brought together by circumstance, sharing the fragile comfort of this moving sanctuary. Their faces, illuminated by lamplight, show traces of weariness, but also resilience. Imagine the quiet exchange of a knowing glance, the slight nod that speaks of shared endurance and hope. The train carries diplomats clutching worn documents, their fingers tracing the edges as if seeking reassurance. Imagine the delicate balance of light and shadow inside the compartments, where memories and dreams seem to float like soft whispers. The train's steady motion becomes a lullaby, a constant heartbeat that guides the weary travelers toward rest. In the dining car, a few late-night conversations take place over cups of tea, the steam curling upward in lazy spirals. As the hours pass, the landscape outside remains a silent guardian of the journey's end. The train slows as it approaches its final destinations, the distant lights of stations glowing softly like fireflies in the dark. Among the passengers, there is a growing sense of anticipation, mixed with a gentle sadness. As you gather your belongings and prepare to disembark, imagine the sound of snow crunching beneath boots, the distant call of a night bird, and the faint whistle of the train as it prepares to continue on its way. This final chapter of the Trans-Siberian journey is a moment suspended between past and future. Between the echoes of an empire in twilight and the first hints of a new dawn, the train will carry on, its wheels tracing the lines of history etched deep into the Siberian landscape. As you step away from the warmth of the carriage and into the gentle hush of the Siberian night, the quiet envelops you like a soft, thick blanket. The train's distant whistle fades into the vastness, leaving only the sound of your breath mingling with the crisp, cold air. Imagine the way your footsteps press lightly into the fresh snow. Each step is measured and slow, as if time itself has softened to match the rhythm of this vast frozen wilderness. Their light is cool and steady, a reassuring presence in the quiet expanse. Soldiers, once tense and watchful, now relax slightly, their breaths visible in the cold air as they speak in hushed tones about distant homes and hopes for peace. Imagine the gentle flicker of the flames inside glass holders, their warmth contrasting with the sharp chill of the Siberian night. His presence is steady and reassuring, a reminder of the careful orchestration that has carried this fragile community across a continent in the grip of profound change. There is a rhythm to these movements, a steady beat that echoes the slow but certain progress of the train itself. The lanterns seem to hold back the darkness just enough to create a cocoon of light and safety, a small oasis amid the vast wilderness. Exiles, too, gather their few possessions with quiet resolve, their eyes lingering on the snowy horizon as if searching for a future beyond the frozen land. Imagine the way the sound blends with the natural quiet, a delicate harmony of human presence and the vastness of nature. Imagine the centuries of travelers who have passed through this vast land, each carrying their own hopes, fears, and dreams. The Trans-Siberian Railway is more than steel and wood. It is a thread weaving together countless lives and stories, stretching across the frozen continent like a lifeline. The journey through the twilight of an empire has reached its gentle conclusion, but the rhythm of the rails, the whisper of the wind through the trees, and the steady beat of your own breath will carry you forward into peaceful sleep. Imagine the way the trees stand tall and silent, their branches heavy with ice bending slightly under the weight of the winter's quiet. The train may have brought you to this place, but it is the land itself, vast, silent, and enduring, that holds the deepest stories. The air carries a scent of pine and fresh snow, clean and invigorating, sharpening the senses even as it calms the mind. The landscape around you is still and quiet, yet full of unseen life. The subtle rustle of animals beneath the snow, the faint crack of ice settling on the frozen rivers. As your eyelids grow heavy and the quiet deepens, know that you are wrapped not only in warmth, but in the enduring story of a journey through a frozen land. A journey carries with it the quiet strength of countless souls. Imagine the silence here, a silence so deep it seems to absorb every sound, every movement, leaving a stillness that feels almost sacred. The last train through the Siberian winter fades into memory, a gentle echo in the vastness, guiding you softly towards sleep. Imagine yourself resting peacefully, wrapped in warmth and calm, far from the chill and shadows of the past. May this story of the last train through a fading empire carry you gently into deep, restful sleep. Good night, and may your dreams be as serene as the silent, snowy landscape we've traveled together. Imagine yourself here, wrapped in the stillness, feeling the cold nip softly at your skin, while a deep warmth glows inside. Born of the journey's end and the comfort of a safe arrival, the world feels suspended between moments. A fragile balance between the fading shadows of history and the gentle dawn of what might come next. There is no hurry here, no rush to leave this peaceful moment behind. Instead, there is a gentle acceptance, a soft farewell to the transient sanctuary that the train has provided. Imagine the subtle exchange of glances between strangers who have shared this passage, a brief connection born of the shared experience, unspoken but deeply felt. Landscape stretches endlessly in all directions, panorama of snow-covered forests and frozen rivers that glisten faintly in the moonlight. This is a place where time seems to slow, where the vastness of nature invites reflection and rest. Back on the platform, the final passengers begin to gather their belongings with a quiet determination. Among them, diplomats clutching their documents with steady hands. Their faces calm yet reflective, as if the journey has given them time to prepare for the uncertain days ahead. The platform itself is a patchwork of light and shadow, illuminated by old-fashioned lanterns that cast a soft, golden glow. As the final moments on the train slip away, the conductor moves quietly through the carriages, his footsteps muted by the thick carpets and the subdued atmosphere. Imagine the conductor's measured pace, the soft rustle of his uniform, the quiet exchanges with passengers who nod in thanks or share a brief word of farewell. The cold air carries a faint echo of distant voices, the murmur of life beyond the platform, a small settlement nestled among the trees, a faint glow of firelight in the darkness. For a moment, the world feels whole and unhurried, a place where stories can be told in whispers and the passage of time is marked not by urgency, but by the gentle unfolding of moments. As you walk away from the train and into the snowy night, imagine the softness of your breath as it forms tiny clouds in the cold air, drifting upward and disappearing into the sky. There is a timeless quality here, a connection to something larger than any single journey or moment. As you pause beneath the stars, the cold air sharp and clear, imagine the sense of peace that comes from being part of this endless flow of history. In this quiet night, you are invited to rest, to let your thoughts drift gently like the snowflakes falling softly around you. Imagine the warmth of your bed waiting for you at the end of this journey, the soft embrace of blankets that promise comfort and rest. And so, as you settle into the stillness, the snow falling silently outside, the night whispers its lullaby. And now, as the quiet of the Siberian night settles softly around you, let your thoughts drift like the snowflakes, slow, gentle, and unhurried.